it. It's like everything's possible.
Right.
My father was the first to finish high school, and one of his siblings also completed high school, and that was it. So me being the next generation, I was the first one to get through college, undergraduate. My sister went on to get her master's, so I couldn't let that stick, so I went back to school and got my master's.
So it's good, yeah, so it's great. Like, see that,
And all of our children are going to college.
Good, good. So my uncle Lupe is the youngest of the six, and like my uncle Tom, they both went to A&M, very proud Aggies. My dad and Uncle Angel went to U of H, and then he, going to A&M, he was in the Corps Cadets, so then he was in the Army for 3 years after that, and then when he came back to Houston, he bought a office supply company called Kindig's at the time, and then changed the name in changed the name about 10 years later to Tejas, and it continues today. And since 1990, they've been recognized in Hispanic Business Magazine as one of the top 500 Hispanic-owned businesses in the country. So doing well, and very much about hard work and giving back to the community also. Okay, so with our family, it's my dad mentioned it about just a little bit earlier. He mentioned the neighborhood center. Alice Graham Baker, the woman who's founded that agency. Our family is just our history is intertwined with Neighborhood Centers Incorporated, and the agency goes back to 1907. And Alice Graham Baker, being the founder of it, spearheaded with other women who were concerned about immigrants, right? About helping immigrants out. So in 1907 they opened, and this is a watercolor, Russ Settlement, and it's just on the edge of downtown, the east side, considered Second Ward, right? Sure. Right. So that opened in 1907 as again the Russ Settlement, and was to provide different services, primarily like a kindergarten and daycare for immigrant children, or the children of immigrants. And my dad started going there when he was 3 years old. You want to add more to that, please?
Yeah, I tell people that I time my birth very badly, so I started taking problems. I was born the day after the stock market fell, back in 1929. It was a Tuesday, I remember that. But really, on Tuesday, October 29, 1929, the stock market fell. The next day, October 30th, I was born. The following day, October 31st, was Halloween. So I tell people my birth must have been a very scary event for my parents. But the reason, how I tell people I timed my birth ready, but I picked the right place to be born. I was born a few blocks from Russ Settlement, the community center. I started going there when I was 3. The staff would tell people, my parents, to send us there so they can get us ready for preschool, for first grade. But the kids really went for the meal we got at noon. So the first meal I ever, first meal I ever got was at the community center where I now work. So if it wasn't for the center, I don't know, I wouldn't have finished school, because when I was going to drop out, after my 2 older brothers dropped out, they had to go to work. I was telling people I was going to drop out to go to work. Luckily for me, the youth worker at the center heard about the situation and told me that if I stayed in school, they would let me work there at the center. And I took them up on it because I didn't know where I was going to get a job. But they said that the only way you can work here and stay in your job is to stay in school. So that's how they got me. They got me through high school. They would tutor me. And then when I finished high school, they said, if you want to go to college, we'll get you a scholarship at the University of Texas. Houston, yeah. Never would have gone to the University of Texas, too far. And there was a group of people called the Pan American Roundtable, and I think they still exist. And our agency approached them, and they were willing to give me a scholarship, and I started at the University of Houston like that. And after the last 3 years, I played on a baseball team, and I had a baseball scholarship. But I was able to get through college, and I kept working there at the center. And I guess by that time, when I finished college, they thought I could make a real social worker. So I said, if you want to go to graduate school of social work and continue to work here, we'll get you a scholarship. So I took them up on it, and they got me through Graduate School of Social Work. And I tell people, I guess I'll tell them this. Yeah.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Down, I have a picture when you're the youth worker there, your first summer.
Yes.
Right here. That's your 1946.
Yes, 1946. I was in charge of the playground.
So he's been with the agency since 1946. And then in the 50s, well, 51 to be exact, at Russ Settlement, which was the same place where you were working in the summer, my grandparents and my grandmother is here, and my grandfather is right here. They took their citizenship class there in Spanish. Also, I was mentioning earlier about the immigration system and so forth. Eisenhower basically put the immigration system that we have in place now. Then there were some major changes with Lyndon Johnson, especially as far as Asian immigration, lifting all the quotas. But kind of the situation that we have in place now that's based on family, sponsorship, or else business, started with Eisenhower. And it's under his administration then that they also allowed, depending on your age and the time that you've been here, how long you've been here, that you can take it in your native language. So my grandparents were one of that first year that people were allowed to take it, given their age and how long they'd been in the country, that they could take it in Spanish in 1951. And so they did that at the Russ Settlement. The Russ Settlement no longer belongs to Neighborhood Center. Ripley House we'll get to, but we still offer citizenship classes at Ripley. It's one of the things that I'm most proud of that we continue to do, is offer those classes to help people prepare for the exam and the interview. Do you want to add anything else to that? Okay, Ripley House. Ripley House, a great facility. Some of you know Ripley House, I'm sure. Yeah. Built in 1940. This is a picture of a picture, but it's the aerial view of it. I think it's shortly after it was built, because growing up I remember these big trees right in front. But this is it, the 1940s building, named after the couple, Daniel and Edith Ripley, that gave $1 million to the foundation that then built Ripley House. The gentleman died in the 1920s, and she lived on, Edith lived on until 1935, I believe. And it's when she died that she left $1 million for the foundation. And then the building was constructed in 1940. So, and since 1940, it's been there at the same location. We're on our second building now on the property, just another part of the property, but been serving the community.
Believe it, I might just add that this was the first community center in the whole country built from the ground up as a community center. Before that, all community centers took over an old house or building that nobody else wanted. But this was for years and years, people would walk into this building and ask us what it was before it was a community center. They couldn't imagine that it was built as a community center. It was just one of those things. Okay.
Good. And then you share about, so we had, in the area, if you're familiar, basically Ripley House is on navigation. If you know where the original Nephos is, it's about maybe just like 2 minutes down the road from Nephos. And then one of the other main thoroughfares in the East End is Canal, runs parallel to navigation. That's where the Russ Settlement was, where our grandparents took their citizenship class, where my dad was working in the playground. And so Russ Settlement was mainly for, they're not too far, less than a mile. But Russ Settlement was mainly for Mexican and Mexican Americans. And Ripley House, because the neighborhood surrounding Ripley House immediately was still mostly Anglo at the time. And it was an unwritten rule, but just the way Houston operated at the time. But it was.
Yeah, if you were Mexican, you'd stay at Russ Settlement. You couldn't go to Ripley House. I remember we were playing a basketball tournament citywide, and the finals were held at Ripley House because it had the best gymnasium in town.
That's what the gym was, right?
Oh yeah, the gym. That's part of the gym. And we made it to the semifinals, so we had to play at Ripley House. So they let us in the back door and out the back door after the game. But we won, though.
So my dad mentioned that the agency put him through social work to graduate school, and then you did your field work at Ripley House.
Yes.
So in the late 1950s, so things started changing. The basketball tournament would have been 1940. 46,
yeah.
And then you started your field work at Ripley in 58? 52?
Yes.
Okay, so things started to change. I have a picture here of my parents, my mom and dad, this is still the original building, the first building, and this is pictures like from the 1980s. And they met at Ripley House, but in the 1960s, and I'll let my dad tell that story. It's another great story, but I'll start with my mother is from Ecuador, so my dad's side is Mexican, my mom's from Ecuador, and she graduated as a social worker down there and had been working for about a year. And the story is that she got home one day after work. My grandmother had seen in the newspaper there that they were advertising a program to come to the U.S. for social workers. You had to have your degree, and it was like a professional development program. And you come to the U.S., you learn about the U.S. system, and then it was part of the program. So it was sponsored out at Case Western in Ohio.
Yes.
And so first they went there for some seminars and workshops, and they brought social workers from all over the world, Latin America, Europe, Asia, and then they send them to different parts of the country to different participating agencies depending on what type of work they wanted to do within social work. And since she wanted to do community work, they sent her to Houston because Neighborhood Centers was one of these partner organizations within that. And then I'll let my dad tell you this.
This kind of program went on for 10 years, and I had already been working at the agency maybe 15, 20 years maybe. I wasn't married yet, and I had a boss that I think felt that married social workers would make better staff, I guess. And he was always hinting when I was going to get married. And at the board meetings, he used to tell people that this program where I met my wife was a Find Felix a Wife program. Because it's back then, even today, most of the social workers are females. So we always had 8 to 10 social workers, and they sent the ones from the Latin American countries to us because they were limited in their English. And by this time, the Ripley neighborhood was people living there spoke mainly Spanish. So they thought that these workers would have better experience with us there. And I was at this point, at this time, the only staff worker that spoke Spanish and English. So I tell people sometimes it's an advantage to be bilingual. So they assigned me to be the chaperone of these visiting social workers. And they were always here for 2 months during the year. So for 2 months, everywhere I went in the neighborhood or an agency, I was always surrounded by these 8 to 10 women. I think that's why my boss called it a Find Felix a Wife program. But I'll end up by just telling you, this program went on for 10 years. And at the beginning of the 10 years, they told us it was going to be the last year of the program. And my wife happened to be in that last group. I tell people, if she's not around, that she was my last chance. But if she's around, I'll tell her that I had to wait 10 years for her.
So you see, our life is just intertwined with neighborhood centers. Well, first, the first good meal that he and my uncles would get, and then put him through school, and then graduate school, and then found a wife. But they met there in the late 1960s, and so we still continue to be at Ripley House. So, but here's my dad is I think it's early 1970s. But one of my proudest stories about my dad and that we like in the community is that you mentioned playing varsity at U of H. He was an excellent baseball player, and had an opportunity, to potentially go off to the major leagues, right?
Yes, we went to tryout.
Yeah.
Tryout, man.
So, but he turned it down at the same time he was offered to go on to graduate school, with the help of, with the sponsorship of the agency, and so he decided to stay in the community and give back. And so, definitely a fork in the road there for my dad and what he wanted to do, but his heart's with the community. So that's where he is and continues to be. Okay, now Ripley House is this is the building, our new building, building 2000. So we're going into our 12th year in this new building, and then very proud and honored, and also humbled that I'm now following in his footsteps. The last 2 years I've been there at Ripley House, part of the leadership of the center. Some of the job duties have changed, some of the title has changed, but I'm there, helping make sure that the center works as it should, as it functions as it should. And we continue to do a lot of the great Similar programs, the mission's the same, that we're going to help people develop themselves, help families improve their lives, help the neighborhood stabilize by the different programs and services that we offer. So we offer ESL, citizenship. There's a school actually in our community center. Our agency neighborhood centers is chartered with the state of Texas. So we have a charter school, kindergarten through 6th grade, and 2 of our other centers also have the charter school in them. We have a senior program, a youth program. We do job fairs, we do health fairs, and just whatever we can do basically to help the community improve itself, to be that partner with the community is what we're about at Ripley House. So. Then a great milestone, for our family and also just connected. This is in Ripley House. 2 years ago, my dad, we celebrated his 80th birthday there. You see on the cake, there's a picture of him as a first baseman, very well known to stretch and catch balls to get people out there running to first base. My mother, my little brother Carlos, and that's actually his daughter, our niece Amanda. They were able to come down. He lives in Washington State, so a little bit hard to get the whole family down here, especially just over a weekend. But we celebrated my dad's 80th birthday there, just fantastic. He's 82 now, so
Wow.
doing great. I always tell people, I get a kick out of telling people that at his 50th birthday party, I was 5 years old. So anybody, if you're having children later in life, it's been great for us. So. And then another great milestone, also shortly after his 80th birthday, was the dedication of the HCC Fraga campus. Kind of hard to see. We have not far from Ripley House there in the 2nd Ward on Millbean Canal, basically. A new campus, a new academic building for HCC was built and named after my dad, which is obviously a great honor, especially since he's still alive. Usually we honor those after they've passed on. But so that's the dedication ceremony for the opening. And then, kind of talking about the family, the Houston story and legacy, generations go on, and hearing from some of you that you've made steps to build on what your parents have done or your grandparents have done. I've got several cousins that are doing the same thing, and with 28 first cousins, I'm taking a risk on highlighting some of them, and I don't recognize any of my first cousins here, so I think I'm okay. But I just want to share with you about a few of them. See, Michelle, Stephen, and Elisa, they're brother and sister. They're the children of my Uncle Champ, the youngest of the 6 Fraga brothers. And they continue with the family business at Tejas Office Product. I don't know if anybody might know them, but they also do a lot as far as being involved with different organizations for the benefit of the community. Michelle is currently on the Sparks board. It's a partnership that the Parks Department has with schools for Sparks, for parks and playgrounds. Stephen is on the board of the Sports Authority, and then Elisa, she's a bit more market because she actually has a family. Stephen's just starting out with his family. Hers are a little bit older, but she's also involved and pitches in where she can. But the 3 of them continue to do well with the business, which I think is great, especially in today's climate where it's hard to be a small business. I think, especially in their case where you got Staples and Office Max and so forth to compete with. And then my cousin David, down here at the bottom, he's a municipal judge. He's the son of my eldest uncle, my Uncle Joe, the one who went off to the Army Air Corps in World War II, and the one who, the 2 oldest that had to sacrifice more for the others. But my Uncle David, and then his, pretty much we're all doing well. We try to pitch in where we can and do what we can, in the city and give back. So, and as mentioned, I did run for city council this time around. I don't know if anybody here voted for me. I hope you did. Thanks. I ran for at large. One of the many things that my dad has done is also kind of hard to tell in this picture, but he was on city council representing District H, which is Heights, part of the north side of the East End where we live back in the 90s. And wanted to build upon that and also feel like we've given a lot to the community, and there's I think being in government, being part of leadership is another way to serve and be part of making the city better. I think especially in my case, being a person of Hispanic heritage, being Hispanic, I think it's important that we're there at the table. We live in a great city. It's a great system. May not be perfect, but you go vote. I mean, that's how things happen. So I definitely felt that was something important to do, especially given the census figures from 2010 that we need to be at the table where decisions are made, and not to exclude anybody or against anybody, but just be there with everybody else making the decisions. As I was telling people, Houston is so diverse. Houston is Black, Houston's Hispanic, Houston's Asian, Houston's Anglo, you know, it's Christian, it's Muslim, it's Hindu, it's, you know, it's everything. It's about being at the table where decisions are made. So you may see me out there again, taking another shot at this, but definitely proud of what our family's done and what we do as part of the community. Definitely proud to be part of Houston, and we'll continue, you know, looking at great examples that I have before me, and also out here with you all and doing what's best for the city and the community. So if you have any questions, we can take them now, and thank you for your attention, and definitely a happy Thanksgiving to all of you.
I have a question I can ask you. You know, when you look like me and you travel to other countries, they never consider you an American, you know. For instance, we were in India, going through in the zoo, anyway, and my wife and I were the only Hispanics, and everybody else was Anglo.
Oh, the delegation from Houston?
Yes, from Houston. Anyway, we were, it was about eight of us, I think, and we were the only Hispanics. So some of the people from India wanted to take pictures of the group. So when they told us to get together for a picture, we tried to get into it, and they said, no, not you all. They thought we were their Indians, citizens. And the same thing happened in Venezuela. I don't know what this guy was saying. We'd like to see more Americans come here or something. And say, well, I'm here. He said, no, we mean real Americans. So I'm in a group now over at the Rice University of community people trying to see what can be done to try to get the cultures together. And I was wondering, you know, the Anglos, which are the ones that are considered all over the world Americans, and the rest of us are not, they're going to be in the minority. So I don't know, what should we do to define the people that are part of our country? Do we call them Americans, or do we have to say Anglo-Americans, Mexican Americans, Chinese Americans, and all that? First of all, is that a problem? I don't know. When you go to other countries, they don't think you're an American? Yes, sir?
Well, it's a two-way street, because until I'm originally from New York, and I don't have any Hispanic background whatsoever, and yet until I came to Houston, many Hispanics I see on the street just start talking to me in Spanish.
Yeah.
So it goes both ways.
No,
But to answer your question,
but what's best to unite our country?
well, the problem, as I see it, is you know, when people in other countries are viewing activities and leadership of this nation, what are they seeing? They're mostly seeing older Anglo, white-haired, white-skinned Americans, right? I think that's starting to change, because now they're looking at a president who is not Anglo, you know, doesn't look Anglo, and I think that's going to start changing. So to answer your question, you know, I still tell people I'm American,
Yeah.
and I just say American, and get a point across to them that we are a diverse country. And despite what you might see on television sometimes,
They don't see you as an American, do they?
no, they don't. Not always. Until I start talking, though, because I don't sound like anything else. I still sound American, but before I start talking, they just assume, you know, I'm from somewhere else.
Yes?
No, I was going to say along the same vein, you know, when you look at movies and movie stars, that's what a lot of folks in other countries see as Americans.
Yeah.
Americans are supposed to be blonde and blue-eyed and in a particular look. However, I feel the same as you. I'm Puerto Rican. I was born and raised in New York. Puerto Ricans are in a slightly different vein than most Hispanics because we're U.S. citizens. But when I've lived in Puerto Rico, and when I've been living in Puerto Rico, and I've opened my mouth to speak, they say, oh, you're not really Puerto Rican.
You're not running around saying, mira.
Because my accent, and obviously they know that I was born and raised in the States, so that my accent is slightly different. So they've said, you know, you're not really Puerto Rican. So when you come to the States, sometimes I'm asked, you know, what my background is, because my married name happens to be an Anglo name. So sometimes I'm asked, sometimes I can pass, you know, or something, I don't know what. But I'll mention I'm Puerto Rican, and they'll be that, you're not really American either.
Yeah.
So yes, I am, because like you, my grandfather fought in World War I, my father fought in World War II, my husband fought in Vietnam. I'm a damn proud American. And that's what I say, I'm an American. I'm of Puerto Rican descent, whatever that means.
Young lady,
I was just gonna comment about the labels. I met a lady, I was at a seminar one time, and I don't recall the discussion, but the term African American, she said, I'm African American. She was blonde hair and blue eyes. She said, I was born in South Africa, and I'm now an American citizen. I'm an African American. But, you know, again, what people typically think that is, I mean, she's got blonde hair and blue eyes.
you mean people from South Africa call themselves Africans?
Well,
Yes.
You know what I mean now, if they're European,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
But they're African, yeah.
So we do need to do something about our labels.
Yeah.
The way
They'll never be right on, it's just hard. You know,
Yeah.
just sometimes words aren't adequate anyway, but, yeah,
Well, we're
yeah.
all Americans.
Right, let's start
Gotta be
there.
that simple.
Right.
Just like, as you were saying, there's a physician that's an Asian is of Asian descent. He was born in Africa. He considers himself an African, but he's of Asian descent. So he doesn't look, he doesn't have the blonde and blue eye, has an Asian appearance, but he calls himself an African American.
Yes.